Because I said what was on my mind. I made a lot of enemies. I made a lot of enemies.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of In Defense of Virology. My name is Bryce Nichols. I'm a professor of genetics at Rutgers University, and I am joined once again by Simon Wayne Hobson. Simon, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. We've got spring, so it's lovely to be alive.
That's right. The weather is getting better here in Jersey as well. A lot of snow. We had a lot of snow, but it's melting. And today, I don't know, there's no appropriate transition, frankly, from going from weather to talking about the subject we're going to talk about today, because the title of your recent essay, which is going to be the focus of this video, is You Couldn't Make Body Bags Fast Enough. So, Simon, do you want to explain what that title refers to?
Yes, indeed, thank you. The gain-of-function controversy was ignited by two papers back in 2012 on a bird flu virus called H5N1 that they have morphed genetically so that it was transmissible between ferrets. And if a flu virus is transmissible between ferrets, it's transmissible between humans. And this was criticized by many people and myself, but it had the effect of being a lightning rod, these two papers. And people ignored similar work from other groups. So there was a Chinese gain-of-function study on H5N1, totally unremarked. And there were papers on a virus called H7N9, and one on an ostrich virus, ostriches are birds, H7N1. And I want to talk about this one. So they did the same experiment as Drs. Fouchier and Kawaoka. So they took this H7N1 virus, they adapted it to transmission to ferrets by the respiratory route. They did it. Well, given the previous papers, this was no surprise. Anyway, they did it. The initial virus, the ostrich virus, if you did a needle injection into ferrets, it will kill 3 animals out of 5. So it's a pretty nasty virus for ferrets. The virus that they recovered after adapting it for droplet transmission, respiratory transmission, that virus killed 3 ferrets out of 5. The Fouchier and Kawaoka experiments were, the numbers of dead ferrets were tiny. Here you have a novel human respiratory virus that kills 3 out of 5. That's 60%. This is like having an airborne Ebola. This is far worse than the Spanish flu. Spanish flu is thought to have killed 2.5% of humans that were infected, something of that order. This would kill 60%. So the title, The Body Bags, You Couldn't Make Them Fast Enough, refers to this because our population is what? 8.2 billion? If that virus got out, and this virus H7, by the way, you and I, Bryce, we're immunologically naive. The whole of the world's population has not seen this virus. So therefore, it would be coming in. It would be devastating, but we thought devastating would be Spanish flu. This thing can do better. Smallpox, for information, kills maybe 30% of those infected. This is double smallpox. Smallpox was estimated to have killed 300 million people in the 20th century alone. So with the large population that we now have in the world, we are talking of billions of people who could die, hence the title. Now, Fouchier and Kawaoka are peanuts compared to this one. The same arguments, I would say they couldn't extrapolate this. We have no idea. But that manuscript is out there. The paper is out there. The blueprint is on the web. Anyone can download it. People have downloaded it. I've downloaded it, and people in North Korea, Iran, and whatever, they've probably done the same. And this work was funded by the NIH, totally funded by the American and National Institutes of Health. When it was published, the journal, smelling that this was a sensitive thing, came out with a an editorial justifying their choice, and they're justifying the reasons for publishing. We can get into the details. They said there was disagreements of whether it was dual-use research of concern, and they said there was disagreements on that. Wait a minute. The atom bomb, how many people have been killed by atom bomb? Well, it's Nagasaki and Hiroshima together. And we're talking potentially billions. And they just had a disagreement on what was dual-use research of concern. So from the institutional side, the University of Maryland, and there was a discussion within the NIH of this, there were disagreements. And despite disagreements, they published. Instead of sort of saying, oh, we got disagreements. Hold on. Let's sort them out. Can we find common territory? Can we discuss? Maybe as a precautionary measure, we should put this on hold. You've got something that could kill maybe 1 billion or more, and you publish. So it was published. Total silence. No one picked it up except for this gentleman. And I wrote to the editors of the Journal of Virology, and they offered me a chance to publish a critique, which I did. And not content to leave the reader or the scientist read my piece and weigh out the pros and cons and formulate their own opinion, they came out with another editorial saying why they published and why basically Simon and Hobson was wrong. They couldn't let the scientists, the virologists, work it out. They had to give their piece. They had to fix what they considered was the right answer and not let people do it. This is a form of censorship. When the people above, the editors, come out with these editorials saying these are the reasons, and despite criticism, these are the real reasons. And as we are the editors, we know what we're doing. So these are arguments of authority. They're not allowing the people, as they say, on the coalface, the virologists, to do it, to sort it out and discuss it themselves. We're having people telling us what is good science. This is not the way science is. So in a nutshell, that is it. It is horribly, well, there is nothing, I have not seen anything more vicious. And COVID is peanuts compared to this. And the establishment, the NIH, remained absolutely quiet as a dormouse. And the American Society of Microbiology, they sought to justify what I would say is the unjustifiable.
At the time this happened, there was a precedent set because of the Kawaoka and Fouchier work that the journals were, and actually that it even goes beyond that, perhaps back to the 1918, the debate about publishing the 1918 virus, right? The reconstruction of the 19. So the journals were hitching their wagons or whatever, for whatever reason.
Well, that's exactly right. The Spanish flu, how can I say, the establishment came out and sort of defended why this was being done. It was to help and it would help us make better and more efficient influenza vaccines. Well, since that paper came out in 2025, that's 21 years. There's not been a single paper that has substantiated that. 21 years later, therefore, I think it's safe to say that there was nothing in that paper to make better vaccines. We saw it with COVID origins because we saw that the lab leak theory, this meant that maybe the establishment was involved. Was it the result of a gain-of-function experiment in the Wuhan Institute of Virology? The hatches were shut. Proximal origins came out in Nature Medicine, the paper from Kalischer et al. In The Lancet, giving the establishment's opinion, which was a natural infection at a time when there was no data. It's not that they were right or wrong. They just simply didn't have the data. Therefore, the journals are complicit in pushing or advancing hypotheses beyond their reasonable position.
And in fact, I guess I think the journal's role here is to sell this to scientists, not necessarily the public. It eventually gets out to the public, but the scientific community is the
target of the journals.
The target of the journals, which then creates this elite, this class of experts that can then defend
Yes.
claims. So what benefit did these research findings have for humanity? Any? We can look now. What has it been? 12 years on? Have these papers proven to be worth the effort put into them and the results? Like, what did we gain for the risk of killing billions of people?
Okay, so the paper was published in 2014 and the virus was first isolated in 2001. That's 13 years. Readers and listeners will know that influenza viruses mutate, and this explains why we have seasonal flu, and that this year's virus was different to last year's virus, and so on. So what is the value of working on a virus that's already 12 years old? It's like working on an extinct dinosaur. It's behind us. There's nothing irrelevant. So you can say, yes, but this will give us qualitative information. It will give us a rough guide. Well, I would say fine, but why not take a virus that came from 2012 or 2013 or 2011? That at least you would get closer to the situation. And yet they didn't. They were saying, yes, but there's this bird flu virus, H7N9, which is infecting people. This could break out. Then the answer is, do the experiment on H7N9. Don't do it on H7N1. There was not one recorded case then of H7 in humans. So they did the Fouchier Kawaoka experiment because it was fashionable with their pet virus, because they had it. And they said, and then you wrap it up in all sorts of language to say this is going to help us predict the next pandemic, which is just nonsense,
But if you were the experiments that you said that they should have done, would those have been more risky or less risky?
We don't know. Another group did it on H7N9, and that was done. And it made a respiratory transmissible virus. But of course, these set of mutations vary for every strain. So what occurs with one strain, what occurs with another. So this one is the worst of the worst. And what shocked me then is that you could justify it. And what shocks me in retrospect is that no one said anything. I was the only virologist to speak out. The only one. Can you imagine? I find that desperately worrying.
The field in general, people, when they're part of the field, they don't like to criticize their peers in this manner, for sure, right? So there is that concern that, like, I'm not going to go after somebody else's work because I don't want them coming after mine. That's sort of at play, correct?
Point taken, but it's actually more poignant than that. There was that op-ed in the Washington Post in the 30th December 2011 from Dr. Fouchier and Dr. Collins, who this is the head of the NIAID, who funds all infectious disease work, and his boss, the head of the NIH. And they said this work was a risk worth taking. So no virologist in the US is going to publicly criticize. Because why? You don't bite the hand that feeds you. This is something that your grandmother told you, or you've read in countless examples of in human history. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. And even though these are scientists who should be talking about data and fact, we compare hypotheses, we discuss, we have conflicts in discuss, and we slowly sift our way through. Because of this article from Dr. Fauci, no one would criticize this. So when this work came out, the NIH clip shot, all the virologists said nothing, and here it is. I was the only one doing it. Because of that, it was censorship. It was censorship from the top of the NIH. And that's why nothing came. So when the worst possible paper was published, which is this one, a new virus that kills 60%. Who knows if it will kill 60% of humans? But what if it killed only 10%? That's still 5 times worse than Spanish flu. And no dog barks. There's something wrong. There's something sick. So many of my colleagues didn't say what maybe they should have said or could have said.
And to put it bluntly, in your essay, you say nothing on the horror of generating the equivalent of a deadly biological weapon. Nothing on the responsibility as publishers that this info might be used by bad actors or rogue states.
And we are sorry, the US is providing recipes free of charge, paid for by the taxpayer, put on the cloud, so anyone can pull it down. It's on there. People have downloaded it. And this is a risk that will never go away. It's like an endless war. It's never going to go away. It's there. You can't stop it. It's in paper copies. It's on the cloud. It's been downloaded on computers that the intelligence community doesn't have access to. You can't stop this. Information is there. The risk will never die. It's like a James Bond, a new James Bond movie. The risk will never die. The risk is always going to be there.
It's a perfect thing for James Bond because then you can keep making movies, because if the risk never dies, like, you just keep making sequel after sequel. How does this play into what's currently going on today? Do you see any of like lessons that were learned then or should have been learned then that we could apply today as we await, policies, like firm policies to, try to regulate dangerous gain of function, at least in the United States right now?
Yeah, thank you for saying at least in the United States. Listeners will know I've been critical of many aspects in the United States, but my European colleagues have been far lazier. I mean, there's debate in the US and that's fabulous. In the UK, France, whatever, there's been nothing. It's if I'm critical of the US, I would be merciless if I had to turn my pen onto my European colleagues. So please feel that the discussion in the US is a very good thing, and you're doing it better than anyone else.
But in terms of like the dynamics that occurred then in 2014 around the publication of these results, how would that have played? How do you think it would play out today? If that paper was submitted today, what would happen to it? It doesn't seem like, at least in terms of publishing results in journals, that there's been any modification in the journal's policies to publish extremely dangerous research that borders on, bioweapons development. Unless I'm sort of reading the.
I agree. I think the whole of the dual use research concern, either nuclear, biological, or artificial intelligence, this is getting swept away in the massive movement and rapid pace of events. It's not being discussed. It should be discussed. A few areas were like the mirror life. Something's going to be happening, I hope. But we can't even get PhD students to have to take a do no harm oath at the end of their thesis. This is something we've mentioned before. It's come up. It's been we've not been the first. There've been calls going back to the last century, last millennium, and we still haven't been able to do something as simple as that. So I think there's tremendous inertia to change. I think the scientists hutch. They don't see the bigger picture. They live in their labs and they erect a wall around their labs, sort of saying, "This is my world, and it's my lab. I get funding from NIH. I have the journals." And they'll say this could help with vaccines or whatever. This is just lip service. It's not serious. It's not sincere. They put it there to feel good, but they are very few of my colleagues get to grips with these big social issues. And I understand it. They're not good with it, but I get that. Not everyone can speak to the media, but when these things blow up, like gain of function, well, discuss it. There's a controversy. People want to know. And what do? You hunker down. You say nothing. As I said, I've seen this before. I'm the only professor of virology who said anything. The only professor publicly on gain of function. That's wrong. There's something wrong when this can be a threat to the families of everyone listening.
You raise several points here about there's multiple aspects of the scientific, ecosystem that need to be addressed in order to get meaningful change on this. So there is the sort of cultural issue that you're talking about and I would actually point out that when you have had decades of funding for research that that is dangerous, you normalize it within the scientific community, and you also create labs that are just used to doing this and see no issues with it. And then also they're sort of intellectually lazy. And when you start getting into like a lane of I do this type of research, you want to continue to do that type of research unless the incentives to do it are removed. So removing those incentives involves funding streams. And so it's a good step that the, NIH and HHS is messaging that we're no longer going to fund dangerous gain of function. But then you also have the journals. The journals incentivize it because if you can publish your dangerous research in a top journal, that's the way, of course, you get visibility and notoriety and then ultimately grant funding. So until we remove incentives to do this stupid stuff, we're going to continue to get this stupid stuff, I guess is what I'd say.
Yes. I would say the same thing in different words. We've had a wonderful period of science from the cloning era from mid 70s through to now. There's so much we can do. We need to focus on human diseases, and I think there's too much work that's going on the periphery, which will not do terribly much. But we can't change things because everyone's got into a rut. They've got into their habits, and this is the way we do things. So I think that we've got to reboot. We've got to realize that our science is so powerful in many areas, and we've got to handle this because we'll lose trust, and the public won't trust us, and they'll wonder what we're doing with all this, and that would be a disaster because cancer is still going to be here. In 20 years' time, 30 years, neurological diseases like Alzheimer's, they're going to be there, and there's going to be suffering, and we want to try and alleviate that. It's as simple as that. And people have forgotten. Everyone's had a good life, and they've forgotten the basics, which is terribly, terribly sad.
And the goal here would be, and I think a lot of the goal of a lot of your essays is to sort of highlight mistakes made in the past to make sure we don't repeat those in the future. And with that in mind, of course, you have a very strongly worded conclusion, which is calamitous, a betrayal of virology, trust in science, thought, and the Western intellectual tradition. So I don't think there's anything more to add there about your view. And I guess, thankfully, no one has died because of these experiments, right? I mean, that sort of goes unsaid.
That sword of Damocles is out there. Is it a little sword? Is it a dagger? Is someone going to pick it up? So the tempo is going to be decided by a rogue state or a bad actor. And you and I can't do anything about it because the information is out there.
And all for getting a paper published. Where were these journals? One was in... This
one was in Journal of Virology, all because it was, let's say the gain of function was unthought out, and instead of sort of saying, oh, well, okay, maybe we got that one wrong, oh, this happens, and stop it, they knuckled down. We had this edict, and this censored virologists across the world. It was censorship. It stopped discussion in the US. And because a virologist in, say, the UK, France, Japan, New Zealand has colleagues, or they're on a joint paper with the NIH, or they have friends working who has NIH paper, they're not going to embarrass their friends. So basically, it was a global, the Italian word omerta. So you don't speak about the mafia. It's omerta, silence. There was a global omerta just because of one article. And everyone played along. Every professor of virology acquiesced. All the journals acquiesced. That's why I ended with that conclusion. It's shocking. That's why we do in defense of virology, okay? That's why we do it. We do in defense because someone has to stand up for virology. Not only is it a useful topic, it's in terms of science a lovely topic. I've actually got an essay called Virology is the Queen of the Biological Science. It's so subtle, it's so interesting, it's so exciting. If you're a virologist, why should you be in another area? It's got everything. And these people misuse it. Makes me mad.
Well, yeah, I get that I get it. You're doing in defense of virology to save virology. I'm doing it for
you're being.
No, I'm saying I'm doing it for the money and the fame and all the star power that's come with
people
these.
listening,
Oh,
those who are listening, don't believe Bryce a second. He's doing this to provoke you and me, and we're not going to rise to the occasion.
and this is where hopefully, if people are trying to think about how we can get to a better future, you have another essay that we didn't talk about today about like the idea of bleeding edge versus cutting edge research. It gets to this idea of like, let's find the balance that protects humanity. The science is used to protect humanity without simultaneously like threatening it at the scale that we can see with some of these experiments. So
Yes. Absolutely.
so with any final words, Simon, on
No,
before
you summarized it well, sir.
okay. Well, there's a first time for everything, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Simon, for joining me again for another episode of In Defense of Virology. Until next time, this has been Bryce Nichols speaking with Simon Wayne Hobson. Take care, everybody.